Two races left in RCI's longest championship in ages, and it is one for the record books. Several drivers still available and live in the championship, none of which can win it here today. But you know what? The rain soaked Brands Hatch here in England, somebody can certainly lose it, just like Matt Whitburn has done in Paddock Hill. Hello, everybody. I'm Jesse Lee, joined by Kevin Boss with Stewie behind the cameras as usual. And under the umbrella today, we're the only dry people here at the track, Kevin. Very wet Brands Hatch, very British weather here. The drivers are struggling with it, though.
Yeah, I've been seeing all over practice people slipping and sliding around as we just saw Whitburn do into turn one at Paddock Hill. Yeah, the British rain gods thought, as you're here, let's give you the best of what we can provide. So here we are. Let's see some fun.
Well, it's going to be fun for us up here in the box. I don't know how much the drivers are going to relish this particular race. All of the championship drivers thus far we've seen go off at least a couple of times here in practice. Of course, they're trying to test the limits, and there's no better place or time to figure out exactly where your limits are than in a session that realistically doesn't have too much weight on it. That practice session, of course, will pretty much echo what the race will give us, including qualifying as well. The weatherman says it's going to be pretty heavy rain throughout the entire race today. There are puddles out there on some of the corners, just small ones though. Nothing that would cause the race to halt, but this is just about as hard as we would allow it to get before we would call it.
Yeah, definitely also going through the longest straight at Pilgrim's Drop. There might be some puddles collecting there, but it's just all within limits. So we don't really want to see it more because there are a couple corners where you can easily just aquaplane spin out. With the walls being this close at most points of the track, you really don't want that to happen to you.
A couple of corners do have a line worked into them. Other corners don't have any such line worked into them. We'll see that by the glossy reflection on the racetrack. It's going to be treacherous, and it doesn't really seem to matter what manufacturer you're driving for here today. They all are struggling with the handling here. And of course, more than that, what we just saw Harley Chamberlain almost do there, just struggling to keep it on the racetrack. Slippery, driving sideways a little bit. Today could be a day, as I said in the intro, where you lose an opportunity to win a championship, but I don't think anybody is going to be able to win it here today based on how close it's been thus far.
Yeah, especially if you look at the top three separated by only 7 points, as we'll just see in a bit in the standings. Overall, all you can do here is lose a lot of points and not gain anything to win the championship with it being this close. So everyone will be on their toes, mostly not to make any mistakes with the grass, with the gravel being so close, and the walls. Don't want to make that mistake. That mistake was going to cost you the championship.
Well, with practice just about over, it is time to start thinking about qualifying. Today, I would normally say here at Brands Hatch, qualifying means a lot, but I think more than anything here today, name of the game is going to be survival. First off, who survives qualifying? 10 minutes here to set the quickest lap possible. Of course, everybody will be out on the treaded, blocked Pirelli tires. Not a slick tire in sight today. The only thing slick is the racetrack.
Yeah, and I think at this point, I do actually think you want to qualify high up just because you won't be within that pack with the spray, with the bad visibility at the start of the race. So, on the other hand, of course, you don't want to push it too hard and absolutely wreck your qualifying, be at the back, and then having no visibility at all. So that's going to be a very tight little balance for the drivers to have to compete with.
It's a good point. Of course, qualifying is tantamount to a good finish regardless, but add in the decreased visibility in the field. That is a huge factor here. When I said that I didn't think qualifying would matter, I simply forgot that first part, Kevin, if I'm completely honest. But what I was more on about was the fact that I think this race is going to be lost on the track, not in qualifying. Whoever is able to go as quick as possible without dumping it off the road, that's probably who's going to win the race today. And I know some people at home are going, Well, yeah, Jesse, that is typically who wins races, but what I mean is you can get away with a lot in the dry, even here at Brands. Can't do that in the wet. You slide off here, you're going to slide off for an age. You're probably going to get into a wall where normally you'd hit a sand trap and it would not be a big deal. Right on board a lap here with, I believe this is Hugo Merrill's Ferrari, who has been quick in practice today, down Paddock Hill Bend and up Pilgrim's Rise into Druids. The slowest, feels like you're crawling through here, but you're actually not going that slow for Druids. And then Graham Hill Bend, one of my favorite corners, technically a double apex. It's got a bend in the bend. Go a little bit wide, but you won't see drivers doing that on a day like today. Really horrible stuff. The Cooper Straight, and then Surtees, a very strange corner going uphill. The camber is not quite right as well. Then on a good day, you can use the curbing, but nothing doing here today. Pilgrim's Drop, Kevin mentioned that earlier. A little bit of standing water right there. You saw it, and into Hawthorne. Very blind uphill corner that you can take with a little bit more speed than you would normally think you can do. Westfield Bend, a corner that drops immediately off into Dingle Dell. Dingle Dell, you've got Sheens, which is another blind right-hander. Just aim for the curb. Can hit that curb in the wet, no problem at all. Sterling, the left-hander, the final left-hander on the circuit. And down clearways, get a lot of passing done here no matter what the weather conditions. And Clark Curve, it's very important not to get this done. This is the British Parabolica in my mind. Now the Brabham Straight, that is a very quick lap around this track, courtesy of Hugo Merrill's the John Lacey Esports Academy driver. And it sets our benchmark at a 30.985, but that's immediately beaten by Samir Fosh.
Yeah, it's a quick lap right off the bat, because I saw him do a 30.7, I believe, in practice. So he's already on that pace on the first lap. Of course, it's just been raining all day. It's the next day. The tires are going to be fresh, so you need to get the temperature in, make sure that the correct pressure. Already be at that pace is quite well done by both drivers at the top then, as we see the Jardier get into second at a 130.8.
Usual suspects up front, if we're completely honest with ourselves. Samir Fosh hanging on to that spot, a 30.64, good enough for the time being, but can't rest on that lap time. Must assume at some point somebody will at least challenge him for that spot, and certainly hasn't given up. To there's credit here. The Oz Ferrari continuing to pound around, looking to improve, knowing that that's not the ultimate pace that he has. That he can make a little bit better lap time. You see around some of these corners, especially in Sheen, you'll see it in Westfield as well. Drivers taking extra curb there, and normally in the wet, if you know anything about race cars, really want to hit the curbs in the wet. It doesn't really matter here at Brands if you hit those curbs, because you're kind of straight lining them regardless. Get into the corner correctly, it all works out. Hugo Merrill's went back to the top, but only for a brief moment. Samir Fosh goes back P1, a 30.437. In fact, as Jardier goes P2.
Yeah, I just did a 130.605. We're seeing a few drivers getting a better time, as I see Dixon Chen just going up to a 131.2. It looks like still there's quite some drivers getting a better time in, getting their iron with these conditions, finding their correct path where you have the least resistance of the wet patches, and like you said before, finding those curbs where you can actually take them and shorten the track where you don't slip out to the outside.
Well, you can see a slightly ran-in line. I wouldn't call it a drier line per se, but it's definitely where the cars are. The water being displaced from that particular part of the track. Michael Herman Frey having a huge issue here coming through Surtees this time. Couldn't get the car braked exactly where they wanted. Continue to, we call that walking the dog here in the States, where you're chasing after the car. I think British people call that a tank slapper. Either way, definitely came out of the groove and lost all of the time they had. Hugo Merrill's challenging for the lead here within 2/10. Will he get closer here? You bet he will. He'll take provisional pole. A 30.367, good enough for the time being. 7/100ths quicker than Samir Foch for the time being. Matt Whitburn was really quick in practice as well. What is this lap going to be?
Going across the line, half a second up into third with a 1:30.542. I think it's going to be a fight between these Ferraris that we've seen at the top throughout qualifying and Whitburn in the Porsche, because they've all been showing quite some pace. So as we just go to him, I was about to talk about him. I'm very wanting to see where Valentin Barrier can finish up in the Bentley, which is sometimes being called the Boatley. So let's see how that car's being able to handle the wets.
You might need some oars rather than a gas pedal this evening, I would reckon, but we'll see how that goes. Good enough for sixth place on that lap. That's more like it. In striking distance, would like to climb up a little bit. Valentin Barrier, one of those drivers involved in the championship fight, does not want to lose ground ahead of championship decider in 1 week's time. Winner Hershey in the 43, the Lowly Racing car comes across the line, does 8th quickest lap time, 31.107 for that driver who continues to fight it and almost loses it. Coming down Paddock Hill, that is a lap ruiner. They'll have just about one more opportunity to get it right.
As we now watch Daniel Jarrett going on to the start-finish straight, finishing his lap, improving his time to 1:31.877. With only 2 minutes left, I think there's only 1 or 2 more laps remaining for all the drivers to get their best lap in. Starting to see that most drivers are starting to struggle improving their time, maybe only a couple hundredths. But yeah, we'll see who can just get that final edge off.
And that could be the difference between starting on the front row and starting outside the top 4 or so. Whitburn, we know, will take no further part in the session. They are the first to come into the pit lane and surrender their stop, or their qualifying, I should say. You have Michael Herman has done the same in the 181. Everybody else has continued. All Vitor Marcos continue around the course. They will have an additional lap. Jardier will get at least one more, no matter how good or bad this lap is. The Yas Heat driver contending for this championship. And it's not that we didn't see this coming. It's simply that I was sold a dummy early in this championship. I was told that Jardier was going to miss several rounds in this championship. It hasn't happened, and that lap puts them in the 3rd place. An improvement by a single spot changes sides of the grid on the 2nd row. 30.4, good enough for that spot. They're all chasing Hugo Merrill's, though, at a 30.255.
Yeah, as we're still on board with Jardier, he's currently 2/10 up on his previous time as he goes on to the Cooper Straight. He might still improve quite a bit. I see some improvements all over the grid as Facekiss has 7/10 faster right now as we see Jardier go through Surtees, over the hill, down to the Pilgrim's Drop. I'm very intrigued to see where everyone's going to end up, because especially down the grid, there's still some people who are improving by quite a bit.
They sure are. Several more cars have joined the first 2 in the pit lane. Samir Foch got within a 10th of Hugo Merrill's and has called it a qualifying session. Joining them is Dixon Chin and 2 McLaren. They have also parked their car. Van Kampen now in the pit lane. Garrett, Eraser, and Bach all in the pit lane. Climbs comes across the line. Can do no better than P10. Marcos comes across the line in 15th. Jardier, though, looking to do a little bit of damage here, looking to get on the front row at least. Needs about a 10th to do it for the front row. Needs 2/10 to take pole position, and he gets close. It's a 30.312, 57/100ths off a pole, and he switches rows here.
Yeah, that was very close with only half a 10th in there as we see Giorgio Migazzi go through the... Oh, is he? Oh, he just finished this lap. Never mind, I was going to talk us through there, but he just finished as we have Hugo Merrill taking pole position with the 1:30.255. Jardier half 10th behind, and in 3rd, Samir Foch.
You got to love parity, and that's what you have with the fastest sectors. Hugo fastest in Sector 1, Jaroslav fastest in Sector 2, and Samir fastest in Sector 3. The only thing those cars have in common is, well, They're all Ferraris, really, and that is excellent parity
Right, we have some good
for the
conditions.
front. The
Couple
last time
programs
we
listed.
saw that
What's your
was a
preferences?
fantastic race. What can we expect to see today? Certainly, something interesting from our championship contenders is getting to that part of the season, and it's all coming down to this. Two races left to go, three drivers in it for the championship. Let's show you the championship standings. Well, here it is. Samir Foch leads the way by a single point over Jardier in second place. Valentin Berrier has done a lot of good work in this championship to keep it close. 271. That is 7 points the difference between leading this championship and the third step on the podium. Barnabas Facekiss in fourth place, 202 points. Savalainen has 176, rounding out the top five. Christoph Simon on 170. Jan Climbs in seventh place on 158. You have a tie for eighth place. Thomas Ehrentraut is tied with Konstantin Soldatov at 136 apiece. And 1 point out of that tie, Stazak in 10th place on 135.
And going on to the next 10, we got Harley Chamberlain in 11th with 132 points, with a tie for 12th between Giorgio Migazzi and Hunor Horshi at 119 points, with the fan favorite, the GTR, with its driver Christian Bock in 14th with 109, shortly followed by Hugo Mels, who took pole position today, so he got some extra points with 104. Andre Dixon Chen, 93. Another tie for 17th between Daniel Duret and Martin Koderman, 72 points. Matt Whitburn, 60 nice points. And rounding out the top 20, Gleb Ziegart with 67.
Outside the top 20 and looking in, Lele with 66, 1 point in front of Borgosman. Jonna Razor in 23rd place with 58 points. Michael Herman Frey with 42 points. Vitor Marcos on 28. Leon Seeley on 19. Van Kampen hasn't got a single point this season, but is in the race today. Everybody with a dash instead of a number has retired from the championship.
And the
Well,
same is for these gentlemen. As you can see, the 31 up until the 40 have signed out of the championship.
Well, it's very close up front. I think we can all agree. It's very close at various points throughout the championship. One of the biggest standouts, other than the fact that we're two races from the conclusion of the series, is the fact that Hugo Merrils has had an absolute stinker of a championship, Kevin. Just cannot get it right in a single race this season. They've been spun around several times. They've had penalties that have kept them out of podium positions. They have the best starting spot today. What can they do? Turn it all around here.
Well, if they can keep it clean through turns 1 and 2, hoping to avoid the mess that might happen behind them, they can just shoot away and have a race of their own and take a very needed win in order to get up the rankings. Otherwise, yeah, it's going to be tough. Once you get into that pack, especially with the spray, visibility is going to be poor, so he really needs to stay ahead of everyone else.
Another question for you, Kevin. You're the race expert here between the two of us. How does Samir Foch, Jardier, Valentin Berrier competing for a championship at a very high level here? What do they do with a car that's on pole position here that they know has been quick, but it's not important to them for the championship? How do you race them if you're a championship contender and maybe the leader of the race isn't? Do you show them the same respect, or do you need to get a move on? What's the game plan?
Say, look for an opportunity to overtake and then maybe get them between you and the rest of your championship rivals. But I wouldn't take any silly decisions here where you might try for an overtake, get hit, spun out into the grass, maybe hit a barrier. You want to avoid any of that. So I'd say as long as they're not slowing you down, might even be best to just stay behind. But if you have the opportunity to overtake, get that barrier between you and the rest of your championship rivals, if possible.
Well, that's going to be easier said than done today. 19 cars on the grid for the penultimate round of the Friday GT Sprint Challenge. the longest season RCI has put on in a very long time. I dare not say ever, but it has been a very long time since we've had an 8-race championship. This round 7 of 8. Somebody will walk away the champion in 1 week's time. Like I say, I worry somebody might walk away here without a shot to get it done. Valentin Berrier starts outside the top 5, but it hasn't really bothered Valentin this season. They always tend to race really well. And speaking of racing really well, what do we always say about Jardier? He always races better than he qualifies. So when he qualifies well, you got to look out for him to lead this thing at some point.
Yeah, definitely. But I just had a look at the standings and all the results again. Definitely keeping the drop round in mind. The only one in the top 3 who's had to use a drop round because of the sign out has Samir Forsh and Valentin Barrier have not. So, looking at that, that might be something in the back of their minds where they want to put in a bit more risk, and even if they lose out, they still have their drop round. But also that said, Jardier is second with that drop round already in play. So it might be a little bit of extra calamity in the strategy for the other two to consider.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Everybody, of course, will eventually use their drop round on their worst start, or their worst finish, rather, start. But if we're looking at it here, the most consistent has to be Samir Foch. Right now, of course, with the drop round, the way it works, your worst finish gets omitted from the final standings. Even still, he has looked almost bulletproof. His worst round was the Hungaroring, and even then, amassed 44 points. It was an impressive total. Nobody else in the top 3 can say that they have had a finish that has been dropped that has been worth 44 or more points. So Samir Foch has been strong all season long. It's no wonder he is the points leader. Could see him pull away a little bit today, but of course, 1 hour of racing to go. And Kevin, there comes the spray that we all fear. Visibility, and then the turn 1 is going to be at a premium.
Yeah, and they're lucky it's not the worst. Like, it could have been flooded where visibility will be absolutely 0. But at this point, track knowledge is going to be key in order to get you through the pack and through turns 1 and 2. Otherwise, you'll see nothing. If your track knowledge is not there, you're going to be in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, and you know, too, something to take into account, not everybody races in conditions like this every week. This may be a once a month, if that, kind of scenario. Like I said before, this is just about the hardest we will let it rain in RCI competition as well. Patience, track knowledge, and your drive ability tested here today. Green flag is down, and we thunder down into Paddock Hill Bend for the first time. They get it sorted out for the first 2 or 3 rows, then it's 2 by 2 down Paddock Hill with no major incidents here. Everybody minding their P's and Q's, at least for the first couple of turns. An excellent Druids here as well. Everybody clean, green flags waving in the background. An excellent start.
Yeah, we did see Jardier go a little bit too wide going into the Cooper Straight as the pack goes into the left-hander of Surtees. It is nice to see that it's all clean for now, especially with the cars behind in the spray with the bad visibility, and can now go down into the Pilgrim's Drop and towards the right-hander of Hawthorns.
I was just going to mention, too, in conditions like this, there should be a little bit more give and take, and you don't always see that, I should say, but that is how you are supposed to start a race like this, and that was just about as perfect as it could have been. Everyone showed a little bit extra cautiousness, a little bit extra respect, and nobody's race got ruined in the first couple of corners. Now, after they've gotten single file, it is race on.
Yeah, we do see 2 stragglers at the rear. That's Daniel Jarrett and John Eraser. Don't know whether they've tipped their wheels into the grass a little bit and slowed down, but for the rest of the grid, it's been a very nice start as we see the race replay of Daniel Jarrett. Yeah, he just had a slip, hit John Eraser. And yeah, that's just, going too fast, too early, not having your eye in, as we see Magazzi also in a collision with someone.
One car off into the right portion of the racetrack. Magazi down to the inside. That was John Arazer that ended up benefiting off of that. And it is all gone wrong at the beginning of lap number 2. That was Paddock Hill, where a couple of cars got together. It all went wrong, completely honest, on the first lap before that, with Razor and Durrett having contact. Razor will no doubt have significant front end damage from his contact with the barrier there as well. So now at least 4 cars out there racing wounded in these very tricky conditions.
Yeah, you don't want that this early on, as we already see drive-through for speeding in the pit lane for Thomas Ehrentraut taking the early pit stop. Would have been a very smart idea. Get the pit stop out of the way and have the clear air. But yeah, getting the drive-through for speeding, it's not going to help his case.
Well, while we have a moment to catch our breath, welcome in everybody watching at home on a Friday evening. Thank you for being with us wherever you are in the world. We hope that you are well. Appreciate you being here with us tonight. The penultimate round of the GT Sprint Challenge here on RCI TV. It's a lot drier where we are compared to where the drivers are. I will assure you of that, as Whitburn, who I thought might have been a threat for the pole position here, certainly looked very sporting in that practice session. Hasn't quite got it done in qualifying, but it's looking very racy here. That's Valentin Berrier, who you'll recall qualified P6, got up to P4. We talked about Berrier's ability to race that Bentley. We also talked about the possibility of having him breaking out a few oars instead of a gas-powered engine in that car tonight. But either way, inside the top 5, doing exactly what he needs to do, because, folks, the championship is within 7 points. And if it finishes, Jardier second, Bosch third, and Berrier fourth, every single one of those drivers are going to go into the final round with a legitimate and easy path to the championship. Legitimately, all they would have to do is basically outrace each other at that point.
Yeah, and being this close between the 3 of them in this race will only make the last race even more spicy, keeping them closer, where you're going to need every point you can get. But yeah, this is looking very nice indeed, as we have a nice little battle here between Vitor Marcos and the number 8 with Sean Lele behind. Very close, but they kept it fair. They're all keeping on going, and we have a yellow flag somewhere.
That's the 300. That's Daniel Durrett. They have continued to have issues. That's almost exactly where they had their issue earlier that led to the contact with a Razor. And of course, we did see Ehrentraut. Oh my goodness. A big move there down to the pit lane for Vitor Marcos. Oh no! And he's contacted the inside wall, look!
Yeah, that's not what you want, going into the pits and then hitting the barrier. That's not something you want to see. We now see Whitman trying to get the Bentley. We're all keeping a little bit of a squirrely exit there. As now Dixon Ken might be able to go off the outside. But
he was definitely off something.
Oh yeah, but yeah. It's going to be very close, though. It does seem like the Porsche of Whitburn has the exit there. And that gives Valentin Berrier a little bit of breathing room, as Whitburn is now being chased down.
Eagle-eyed viewer in chat's already seen the Ehrentraut drive-through penalty for the 999. That is indeed for track limits this early into the race. Believe it or not, that's not an RCI record. The RCI record is lap 1 at Misano. That was a Wednesday championship a year and a half ago, I think it was now. It's at least a year, might have been a year and a half ago. We had a first lap drive-through penalty for track limits, well, within the first 2 minutes of a race. And my goodness, Dixon Chen just continues to drive off of the racetrack. Oh, and it hasn't come undone, but it has here, as that's going to be a huge move there. Was that Harley Chamberlain? And it was off into the gravel and down into the pit lane. That was a direct response from being shoveled off of the racetrack there.
Well, from my point of view, it looked like Chamberlain went a bit in too early and hit Dixon Chen, which actually ended up with him being in the gravel. But yeah, then good chat of him to immediately jump into the pits, take that pit stop now, and then have the least amount of track time loss compared to all the others.
Well, it's getting a bit scrappy here. They managed the start just about, but it's all gone a little bit pear-shaped by some of the teams here. The reduction in traction, it's not keeping them from fighting, admittedly. is coming to blows on several different occasions. Meanwhile, up front, this is the view from Jardier's car, the Yaz Heat 39. Oh, Daniel Duretz had another huge off. Oh my goodness. That
Uh,
McLaren has just had a horrible start to this race. That is the third accident in as many laps.
yeah, and I think they're all over at Hawthorne's, so he's not right liking that corner as we go back on board with Jardier, trying to hound down Hugo Merrill to get that P1, and like I said before, then get that little bit of a buffer between him and Samir Foch.
Well, I'm just trying to catch my breath just a little bit, and I was watching Jardier's inputs on the wheel. Of course, they are representative of what you could expect, and even him just sitting in second place is fighting the car a little bit. Gunnar Horschy having a little bit of a battle here. Car down its inside. That completed. No real harm or foul there. I feel like Gunnar kind of facilitated that move just a little bit, and why wouldn't you in conditions like this? But talk about Jardier's inputs and how normally you look for very smooth, calm inputs, but on a day like today, you're not going to find that from anybody. It's a million little counter corrections per lap around here.
Yeah, with every little bit of that you hit the throttle too much, you have to correct. Just even if you don't hit the throttle, you can just slip through the corner. You have to a little bit, maybe a bit more, bit less. But yeah, every corner, you're never going to put it in perfectly unless you're an alien.
Yeah, and of course, Jardier sort of blends into the humans as an alien, but trust me, he's definitely an alien. I definitely know that, and he proves it on a day like today just how incredible his ability is. They've lost Samir Foch and Valentin Berrier to the tune of 4.5 seconds. It's all Hugo Merrill's and Jaroslav Hanzik out front in this race. He rode on board with Jardier a lap ago. This is what the rear diffuser of the John Lacey Esports Academy Ferrari looks like. Looking back at Jardier, as far out as these two have gotten from the field, the fastest lap on the track was recorded by the third place car, Samir Foch.
Yeah, and it wasn't too much faster than what Hugo Mills has posted. Oh no, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong time. But yeah, it does look like Samir Foch has some pace in that car, but maybe not the consistency in order to be fighting with the two up in front.
Interesting question from chat by many saying that Samir is also racing for Yaz Heat. Will that come into play? Well, oh no, a car spun around. Is that Duret again? No, that's not Duret. That's Gunnar Horschy, who's had a huge slide here, I thought. Coming through a couple of the corners a lap ago, it looked a little unstable, but yeah, just took the wide line there and spun around in the most unadvantageous place in the middle of the track. Able to read the traffic, thankfully, get it onto the grass, get it going in the right direction for the lowly Racing 43. It has gone a bit wrong here. Daniel Duret has been off again, it looked like. Did he have,
Yes.
No, he didn't have help, did he?
No, he just went off by himself, which is a little bit weird. Maybe he was looking too much into his mirrors where Chamberlain was and didn't focus on his brake markers. But yeah, it does look like Jardier is getting closer and closer to Hugo Mills every lap as we look from the splitter of Jardier's 39. Going through Paddock Hill Bend. And he goes a bit wide.
Goodness!
That's going to cost him some time.
It sure will. It will not deter him at all. He would have probably factored that in. And well, if I go off into the dirt, I'll lose a little bit of time, but I'm not going to do anything too rash to upset the balance of the car. He drove out of it like you would expect him to. Continued the fight, though, slightly further back than he was. The question from chat was about Bosch and Jardier, who, by the way, now are co-owners of the fastest lap. First of all, let me explain. If two cars run the fastest lap, I'm pretty sure we give the bonus point to the car, or the bonus points, because there's more than 1 point, to the car who ran it first. So Samir Foch would get that point unless one of the race directors here at RCI corrects me. I'm pretty sure that's how it's done. I have always said we should give it to both of them, but we will see how that works out. But again, to the question of how will Jardier and Foch race each other if it comes down to it for the championship, and it is looking like that's exactly what's going to happen next week. Will there be any team orders for Yazid? If the George Boothby and Jardier fights from a season or so ago are anything to go by, and I believe they are, no, I don't think they will be any team orders. I think they're going to go at it hand over fist. I really do. I think they'll race each other just as hard as they'll race anybody else.
Yeah, and we've already seen them fight between each other in earlier rounds, but they've always kept it clean. So if it's going to be for the championship, they're going to fight, but it's probably going to be a little bit cleaner than if it was anyone else, in my opinion.
Yeah, very interesting scenes we're seeing here. A couple of drivers tied for the quickest lap in these conditions. That's impressive. Samir Foch is losing just a bit of time now. 5 seconds, it was 4.5. So even with Jardier going off the track ever so slightly, losing a little bit of time, all of which he's already made up, of course, is falling back is Samir Foch. But it doesn't matter how far back he falls, as long as he stays in front of Whitburn and Berrier. Of course, Whitburn has gotten in front of Valentin Berrier at this particular juncture, and Lele is trying to get in front of John Razor, who you'll recall is carrying a lot of nose damage on that car for the time being.
Yeah, and there's going to be a question of whether he will repair it when he goes into the pits, because we don't know exactly how much it is, but it has to be a lot with the way he hit the barrier. Though I am intrigued on how this fight is going to unfold, because I can remember Imola, where these two came to blows, with Lele missing his brake marker as they're getting very close
Oh!
here. What a slide from Lele.
I'm gonna need a replay. Thank you very much, broadcaster Stewie. Look at this big slide. Well, he did miss the apex, so that's minus points, but what a save!
Oh, and Jardier has gone past Hugo Merels.
Oh, something must have happened to Hugo.
Yeah, so we're now looking for the back of another car.
Like, Jardier did such a great job, obviously, hounding him for all that time, but something must have happened, because Jardier is not only in front of him, but has a significant lead on him after the pass was made. So that leads me to believe that Hugo made a mistake. Now, I could be wrong about that. Let's see. Already in the lead here. But again, see that gap there? That is not a simple pass. That is Hugo has made a mistake. I would assume anyway.
Maybe not. We'll just have to wait as Thomas
Ehrentraut
just hit the barrier, as he just loses it. As you said before, once you slide for ages. Though he seems to have stopped there, so he kept it clean and safe then. But yeah, that's not something you want to see at the back already. Also because he went into the pits quite early. But then that's not something you want to see. That'll dent his confidence.
Well, the one steward's decision that we have to give you is the obvious one on the screen, I'm afraid. 15-second penalty for car 300 for losing control and taking out the 699. Position not gained. We're going to go back and try and find the Jardier pass on Hugo. Attempt to find out what facilitated that pass in the first place. I'm betting on no contact and a mistake by Hugo going ever so slightly wide, allowing Jardier to sneak on through. Let's see if we can find it. Here is back pre-pass. Hugo Merrill's in the, what did you call that, turquoise perhaps? And black Ferrari. Yep, that's exactly something along the like of what I thought would have happened. A bit more dramatic than I was probably picturing, but nice move nonetheless by Jardier, getting out in front, taking the lead of this race. That has changed this championship complexion a bit.
Ooh, how close these two are going down Pelgrim's Drop. Let's see how they get through the right-hander of Hawthorns. And for now, they're clean, but it is close, and they've kept it clean, with Jan Climbs just able to stay out in front. That was quite some fight they had.
I know just about as much as you do about what happens when you try to go too wide through there in the dry, Kevin. So the fact that they were able to manage that in the wet, is even more impressive. No contact. You could tell both drivers were trying to keep it off of each other, knowing that contact only ruins both of their races, and they were able to do just that. My hats off to them. That was a heck of a battle there that did not end up in tears. Not that you'd be able to see tears on a day like today. Cartier out in front. This changes the championship battle. If things hold, Cartier would be your championship leader leaving today, going into the final round. Now, Samir Foch is catching Hugo Merrils, and at a pretty decent clip, I might add as well. A quarter of a second in the final sector alone on that last lap. If Foch gets back by Hugo Merrils and takes second place and they finish like that 1-2, Cartier over Foch, Foch would still relinquish the championship lead. But folks, I'm telling you, it'd be real close.
Oh, yeah. And also Valentin Barrier has gone back up to fourth. Now going to try and chase down Samir Foch if possible. And Whitburn's dropped down to sixth. So possibly the same thing has happened to Hugo Merrils, trying to get through the corner, then just losing it a little bit. And then with the field being close back there, losing 2 positions in the progress. But here we see once again Eshan Lele and Johnny Razor duking it out. They're now coming towards my favorite corner named Dingle Dell before they go into Sheens. This is where they came very close before, where Lele had his perfect save. But yeah, this is one battle that seems to be spicing up, also with Horsey now on the back of him.
Oh man, and Horsey had that huge moment. I think it was, Paddock Hill Bend. There's a lot of hills here. The racetrack. There's hills on the racetrack. There's corners named after hills. It does get confusing for a American such as myself. But in Paddock Hill, I'm pretty sure Horsey had that little bit of an incident. That car just does not look stable, that McLaren, but it hasn't kept him away from the battle. Certainly not. Trying to take over 13th place. A wide move here by John Razor, just about saving it, and dare they be 3 wide. They are. Oh, and it's a huge crash coming into Druids.
Oh, that's not what you want to see. They just were a bit too close together, giving each other no room at all. And yeah, it ended in disaster for both. Still, if you look here, they had the opportunity to both overtake, but then...
What on earth happened there?
Was that John Eraser turning in? Or no, it was John Eraser. That was on the outside.
Was on the outside. That was so strange. I would have thought Eshan Lele was down the inside and maybe an aggressive move, but I don't know who initiated contact there. What a strange accident that sees John Razor, who looked like they were going to lose at least 2 spots there, ends up not losing anything, and in fact gets away cleanly from that.
Yeah, and it looks very weird because it was either Lele turning in or Horsey tapping the rear, which initiated that, and it wasn't too clear for me which one of the two happened, but this does give John Razor all the space he needs to calm down a bit, get his composure, and keep going. With no one breathing down his neck, he can just drive his own pace, do his own race.
I'm absolutely flabbergasted by that. I felt like there was more than enough room on the racetrack, Kevin, and do correct me if you think that's incorrect, but I felt like there was a lot of space. Barrier did not pull back across the racetrack. Don't know why. They were all playing for the inside corner like they were. Very odd. Has led to a couple of cars being taken out of the position. John Razor will not care too much about that because now they have a little bit of clean space. And keep in mind, Razor has that nose damage from the very early incident on in this race. And I wonder if maybe they'll consider fixing that, despite the fact that it will need more time in the pit lane.
I think it will depend on how much time they think they're losing compared to the guys in front and behind. Where they are, what they go. It's going to be a different, completely different factors that will determine that. Oh, that was a bit of a wiggle from Whitburn there as he tries to go past Dixon Chen, who's just been given a 5-second penalty. But he goes through into the last curve onto the straight. It was a nice move by Whitburn.
Sure was. Talking about penalties, that 15-second penalty for car 34 for braking late and taking out car 8, the position was returned. So what would usually be a drive-through reduced to a 15-second penalty served in the pit lane on the stop. Racing incident for minor contact between the 206 and the 10. A 5-second penalty for car 62, not leaving enough room, causing contact and time loss to another car. So 5 seconds to the 62, and a racing incident between the 62 and the 43. But of course, after what we just saw, we know the stewards will have something else to look at here, and I'm quite curious what they have to say about that.
Oh, I don't want to be a steward now. They'll have more angles than we just had. They'll have a proper look at it, but yeah,
I
it's
just, I
going to
just
be
want to,
interesting.
I want them to use those angles to tell me what I saw. Is what I want to know. I have never seen anything quite like that around here that didn't have touring car drivers involved, quite frankly.
Yeah, like you said before, they gave each other no room whatsoever, with still quite a bit of track between them and John Eraser. So, really want to know what went through their minds when they were just squeezing each other onto the right-hand side of the track.
Looked like Shedden and Chilton trying to go through there a little bit for my taste, but we'll see exactly. I just, again, I want them to make sense of that for my own personal sanity. Hugo Merrill's in second place. They've not hemorrhaged time as I would have expected, especially with the ease that Jardier not only closed up to the back, but obviously passed him whenever he made a mistake. I expected that car to be going off. It really hasn't done. Samir Foch continuing to gained another half a second in the last couple of laps. So the pace has slowed down for the rate of catch by Samir Foch, but he is still doing it, of course. Valentin Barrier off the back of this group by 10 seconds. It was 9 seconds. So that continues to become a bigger gap. That will not trouble Samir Foch. The dead tie for the fastest lap of the race has been broken by Whitburn, who has run the outright quickest lap in that Porsche.
Yeah, he did a 130.7, just a tenth faster than what the others did. But it was enough to break that tie. But the fights here seem to be, it's going to be an all-Ferrari battle for the win, with Whitburn chasing down Barrier for P4, and for Barrier it's going to be of utmost importance to keep Whitburn behind in order to keep his championship hopes alive, even though it's not going to be too big of a difference in point loss if he gets fifth. But yeah, he want to stick to that fourth.
Well, I just talked about how Hugo had not fallen off the back of Jardier by too much. Still a second in it, but Hugo just retook the quickest lap of the race. Thomas Ehrentraut has had a bit of a day. That day continues. A wet edge of the racetrack is going to send that BMW spinning. That is a very precarious spot you can't see when you're coming through there. It is a blind corner after all, but well done getting off the racetrack without further incident.
Yeah, and especially those are good by the other drivers. They'll probably have gone off their throttle a bit through there. Knowing it's a blind right-hander with the yellow flags being waved, you want to be a bit more careful going through there as you have no idea where the car is exactly. Like, they'll have a track map up, but you never know the exact location.
Yeah, I mean, you come through there and there's a waved yellow flag, and that's great. That warns you that there's something up there, but when it's a blind turn like that and it's going sort of downhill, as it would be in that section, there's trees and a barrier there, and you know, the car is not really that much taller than the barrier. So you're trying to figure out where it is, and if you can't see, you have to guess, and it's not really a speed that's slow enough, really, and you don't want to give up too much time, but you also want to be safe. You don't want to give the stewards any reason to give you a penalty for not adhering to local yellow, etc., or so forth, and using due caution. That was, though, taken care of in that particular incident. What I can see with the racetrack, folks, as we ride off the board of the Rocket Sim Sport Bentley, Valentin Barrier's car looking back at Whitburn, is some of the racetrack now does have a defined line, or a ran-in line on it again. That wasn't true about 20 or so minutes ago. The racetrack, though, still very much completely saturated with no such run-in line.
Well, we've seen it with the fastest lap constantly being beaten at the moment. The track is speeding up quite a bit again. And yeah, we'll probably only see faster times as we now see Hugo Merrill's closing in on Jardier, where we thought it was going to be the other way around with Jardier running away. But it seems like Hugo has found that bit of pace that he was lacking before.
Yeah, it's remarkable what's gone on there. Hugo has not only been able to recover from his, I'm going to call it like it is, near death experience, really, if we're honest. It's not quite that. Not quite that serious, but you hit that curb and you go off into Neverland, not really coming back from it in the race. That's your day done, basically, and was able to save that and to keep any ill things from happening to you. Get back in the race, and now all of a sudden, the fastest car on the racetrack leads me to believe that that was the strategy all along from the 51. They're trying some good tactics here, I reckon. Something to do with the fuel, if I had to hazard a guess. Whitburn has caught the back of Barrier now. The fight for P4 back on.
Yeah, it's getting closer and closer every lap. I wonder how long it's going to take before Whitburn's going to try and lunge it somewhere up the inside to try and finish the overtake, and then do it for once and for all instead of keep on squabbling. Doesn't look like it's going to be through Druitt, but we have had the penalty come through for that weird incident that we saw before. It's a drive-through for the car 43. 43 forced alongside, causing the takeout of the 8. So yeah, that was between the 8 and the 43. There's also warning for car 43, spinning out and not brakes.
Wow, okay. So that is very interesting indeed. Those coming through, and that sort of sums up what happened with that incident. It's feel like they forced themselves alongside, caused that incident. So there you have it. That's done and dusted in the books. About half the field still have a pit stop left to do around the halfway point in the race. Kevin, if you were out there, what would you do? Would you pit around halfway, would you say?
Difficult choice, because I might want to pit actually very early, like some of the other drivers have done, just to get out of the pack. But it also depends on where you are. Like the cars in front, if they're feeling safe and secure, maybe you go a bit later, get that little bit of extra fuel in, so it gives you a bit more option. Mid-pack, I would say pit early. But yeah, that's what I would do, depending on where I am.
Yeah, if I'm in a battle and I'm on the back of somebody here, I'd probably pit. If I was the leader, I'd try to stay out as long as possible, or at least hit the next lap after whoever behind me. Oh my goodness, scary moments here as some of the lap traffic coming into play now, and that has set up an opportunity for Matt Whitburn to make a move. Fanning him off there is Barrier. He just about had the overlap this time through. That created a bottleneck that already existed. A bottleneck on top of a bottleneck here, as they will be nose to tail, pulling out, taking a little look, flashing the lights as Whitburn, looking down to the inside, showing the nose, nothing doing, not making an attempt. Trying to fill up the mirrors of the Bentley right now.
Yeah, that little thing in the middle, actually very big this close, but Brian forced a mistake from the other driver. But yeah, it's a bit of a shame he wasn't able to from the incident there with, I think it was Daniel Durrett, the lapped car. Though, you could also say Valentin Barrier made his car very, very light there.
Barrier, I think, made a point, and I think Whitburn had a rebuttal point as well, as now Barrier is going to come in this time. Going to be very careful. The chicane entry to pit lane here, built to slow down the cars and protect the pit lane, of course, doing its job. And Herman Frey trying to stay onto the racetrack. Oh my goodness, that car looks all out of sorts for Sprexy's.
Yeah, he's flashing his lights, so I wonder if anything happens within him and Christian Bock in front, which Christian Bock goes into the pits. Though I'm actually surprised that Valentin Barrier went into the pits exactly at the waypoint, because it did look like Whitburn was the faster driver. Oh, Herman Fry going into the gravel.
Oh,
that was some drift. Wow.
Well, that is why Paddock Hill Sandpit is that big. It is absolutely ginormous, and that is a technical term, Kevin. There's a reason for that, and that is the reason.
Yeah, if you lose it like that, you want the gravel or sand to stop you there, and not that you shoot through into the barriers. But yeah, coming back to my point, being surprised to see Barrier go before Whitburn, because Whitburn was chasing him the entire time. As Jardier now goes into the pits, like, this is what I expected. Oh no, actually, Jardier was in front, so I'm more and more confused.
Yeah, you and me both. Both times we saw some nice battles up front that have been broken up by the lead car coming in to pit. All that tells me, Kevin, is that they have not all wanted to change their strategy here. Now, I worry in Jardier's case, knowing that Hugo Merrill's whatever speed they had lost there after the start of the race, they had clearly found it again. And what does that do? But then again, Jardier did retake the quickest lap of the race. So maybe based on that, thought that now is the right time. Get in, and when you come out of the pit lane, push as hard as possible. Interesting strategy here, contrarian to what we're used to, though.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see where they end up when Hugo Merrils and Whitburn have done their pit stops, especially since I thought it was going to be the other way around. Yeah, I mean, I'm flabbergasted here as we see Steven van Kampen near the end, near the backside. Christian Bock in the GTR as they're now going through machines. I didn't really see Christian Bock too much till now. Nice to see him again.
I will say that is one large car to try and have to pass around one of Britain's oldest racing circuits, and not something Van Kampen is very interested in having to do. Clearly a little bit more speed in the Steven Van Kampen car, the Trackside Esports Honda. Love to see manufacturers that you don't normally see battling it out. Who would have had a GTR versus a Honda here in these conditions? Probably wouldn't have done, but this is exactly what you have. Christian Bach doesn't really have to do a whole lot. His car does a lot of the heavy lifting. He is going to go a little bit wide here in Druids. That will invite a little bit of a look from Van Kampen, but covered off very nicely on the exit down into Graham Hill Bend, looking down to the inside again down the Cooper Straight. He's going to have it. This might be the opportunity Van Kampen was looking for.
Yeah, as he just take the inside as Christian Bock goes wide. I hope it doesn't lose him too much time. Yeah, he's back on track. But yeah,
you can't brake on the grass, I think, is what we're learning. I mean, we already knew that, but you're seeing it firsthand. Braking, turning on the grass, not going to work today.
No, I've also been driving a GTR myself a little bit, and I've noticed it's not the strongest through the corner, but in the straight, oh boy, does that thing have engine power.
I feel like I'm in a different category down the straight, almost like I'm in a small prototype of sorts. Makes me feel awesome. Thundering down the straights in it. It is, however, unfortunate that I get a nice long queue after I exit every corner.
Oh yeah, and then seeing them disappear in your rearview mirror like a little dot.
A very potent weapon, this particular car, around some of the power circuits, including Monza. And it's pretty nice effect around some of the more sweeping corner circuits like Spa, for instance, as well. Straights on that track, though those straights are actually straight, but just about gets the job done. Christian Bach, though, seems in pretty much full control of the car, and that's something that we can't really say for some of the other competitors we've seen today.
No, like, even though he did go a little wide going through Surtees as he's now being overtaken by, I think, a faster car. That was Whitburn, yeah. With Herman Fry still being behind him, trying to look for that inside line or any possibility to overtake. But yeah, as we said before, once that GTR gets going, there's no catching it.
Well, Michael Herman Fry is going to try and do exactly that, as we saw a Honda. We can do 181, and nope, that wasn't what you thought it was. That did not happen. That is all still good. Look how close they're getting to there's no real curve there. It's just the track drops off, and it's grass, and they're absolutely flirting with it here. Scary stuff in these.
I will say there's a little bit of like a rubber grate on that side. Oh, as Herman Fry goes on the inside of Christian Bock in the GTR, taking P12 away from him. They now go through Clark Bend. That was a nice overtake.
It really was. Probably caught him off guard. Hugo Merrill's John Lacey Esports Academy Ferrari in the pit lane, pitting out of the lead. This is what we're waiting for. Who's going to win the fight? Whitburn will take the lead of the race for the time being, but we're all watching this man, the Yas Heat car, Yas Heat Ferrari of Jardier Jaroslav Hanzik, seeing if he will retake the lead here on the sequence of pit stops. The 51 still in the pit lane, still stationary, doesn't have far to go when he gets released, just has to get to that 50 board to get back on the throttle. Here comes Jardier coming down the straight, the Brabham straight. Here he is on the right side of the picture, and he's got him, and they're going to be nose to tail again. What a brilliant couple of pit stops that sees absolutely no movement between the two of them. It's game on to the finish.
Yeah, and this is going to be the fight all the way down to the finish line. We've seen them fight before. They are keeping it clean, but yeah, this is going to go on all the way until the end. But hopefully for Hugo Merrill's, he can switch on those tires early enough in order to keep it close.
Tell you something else, Samir Foch didn't lose any time either. Absolutely even from when Samir came into the pit lane, so nothing lost between what we assumed to be the top three here today. Again, I talked about it earlier. What would Jardier do? How would Jardier race a driver like Hugo Merrill's, who is no threat to him in the championship? Well, now the reverse of that. Hugo Merrill's must know that Jardier is one of the drivers that's going to have an opportunity to win this championship next week. How do you drive somebody like that? I would assume you don't play anybody any favorites and you drive them just as hard as you would anybody else, but maybe in these conditions, show a little bit of respect for the integrity of the championship, which I don't think Hugo's going to have a problem in doing.
Oh, I'm a bit on the other side, and it might be a bit devious, but at this point, knowing Jardier is fighting for the championship, maybe actually go for that little bit more risky move, knowing that Jardier might pull out of that not to wreck his own championship, just to give him that little bit of an extra thought of, am I going to defend this?
Whitburn and Face gets down into the pit lane. Kevin, that was devious. That is the correct word. That is I would have never considered that. That's why it's a brilliant move.
Oh, thank you.
Whitburn's going to come out of the pit lane here, and something very interesting with this is they will, without any contest, be in fourth place. Barrier is down in sixth. Chamberlain in front of them now. That's shaking it up, and if Barrier cannot get back inside the top five, that won't eliminate him from championship contention next week, but it will make it very hard to win it.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised he's all the way down in P6 now, being taken by Harley Chamberlain. But yeah, I'm also interested on seeing what Whitburn can do now that he doesn't have Barrier in front. He did have quite some pace in that Porsche of it. But yeah, still, I think it was 12 seconds behind Samir Foch. Not too sure whether he can make that up in 20 minutes, but we'll have to wait and see.
Well, it is the three Ferraris up front in this race. Which one of them will win it? Two of which are fighting for a championship. Two Yas Heat drivers and the John Lacey Esports Academy driver in the middle. The hot dog between the buns, if you will. Whitburn in fourth place. That's the second time that driver has taken over fourth place. They passed Barrier earlier, you'll remember, before some sort of momentary mistake in one of the corners that gave that back and then some. They have sole possession of fourth place. Barrier needs to get a move on. We suspect Barrier might have done a contrarian strategy. They might have taken tires. We can't confirm that, but certainly that stop was quite a bit slower than most, which usually means they have taken tires. They've done something strategic. I highly doubt it had something to do with damage, though it is still possible. I can never tell. We'll see on the timing sheet. 2.7 seconds the gap between Chamberlain and Barrier. Posted on that. See if that changes. No change up here at front. They are absolutely glued to each other.
Well, actually, looking at those pit stop times, it looks like Barrier was 5 seconds, took a 5 second longer pit stop than most. So that would maybe look like the tire change did happen. We'll have to wait and see whether that's an advantage to him or not.
Well, you know, sometimes if your tire pressures are not right, it's just better to change the tire pressures, get the input in there, put the new tires on, and do battle best you can at the end of a race. And if you are losing 5 seconds over the course of a run, which very well could have done to the end of this race, it's still better to change the tires and negate that time loss and be on the attack. I never want to really be on the defense unless I'm leading a race late where I'm in the driver's seat. I would rather be the one chasing. Late in the race, leading the race, yes. Defending, I'm fine with. But I never want to be the defenseless driver. I think most people would agree. You want to be the one attacking, want to be the one with the freshest whatever it is that you need to get you to the end. And maybe what Barry is doing. Barry definitely is gaining. He gained 7/10 in the last 2 sectors alone.
Oh, that's pretty damn quick.
That's definitely tires and tire pressure change if I've ever seen.
Yeah, then being able to go that much faster than what he did before does look like that. But yeah, still seeing this fight between Eshan Lele and John Eraser. Once again, as we saw 20 minutes ago before Lele came to blows with someone else. Can't remember that. But they're very close together once again. We don't know whether John has is damaged, so we don't know whether this fight is going to have the same dynamic as it has before.
Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it? They've caught Eraser, and Eraser has just had a horrible race. Oh, the Honda has had an issue here. This is Harley Chamberlain. They're going to be back to P6 now. That has allowed Barrier through. Oh my goodness, and yet again into the grass and into Hawthorne Bend. Do they make it to the wall? Yes, they do, but ever so slightly. And that has allowed a couple of drivers through, including the Valentin Barrier car. Actually, no, Valentin Barrier is the only car that got through. In fact, Whitburn was already through. So that is very important because that makes this fight that could potentially happen.
Dixon Chen has also gone past.
Oh, yeah, he sure has. Dixon Chen has now gone past, but this battle that you could see, it's 5.3 seconds between Whitburn and Barrier. That could be huge. If Barrier is able to gain 4th place back a 3rd time today, that would put him back in the championship hunt and from a reasonable position, I'd say.
Yeah, and I was also looking at Whitburn before if he could close the gap to Samir Foch, but he's only been losing time. And with Valentin Barrier on the hunt now, it's going to get tough at the end for the race for Whitburn.
Chat makes a good point from earlier. We were talking about being the defender or the attacker, and the attacker is the one that assumes all of the risk, because if you hit the car in front of you, it's automatically, well, it's not automatic because the stewards look at it, but usually speaking, it is your fault for hitting the other car, of course. There is some responsibility if you are defending. You can't do more than one or so moves across the racetrack. You can't be weaving about and everything sort of deal. It's not like F1 where it's only one move and you're done. You can't be braking, moving under braking, weaving and stuff, doing things that are generally dangerous. But still, it is a good point, though. If you are the attacker, you are the one assuming the lion's share of the risk.
Yeah, and that's very important for the likes of Hugo Mels and Valentin Barrier once he catches up to Whitburn, that it's up to them to keep it clean, keep it safe. So, like I said before, the devious thought coming back for Hugo Mels, maybe take a little bit of extra risk where Jardier wants to keep that little bit of it.
Does Jardier have a trick up his sleeve here? The gap growing ever so slightly. It was under half a second for the past 10 minutes or so, and just about over that 1 second threshold now. Looks like Jardier pulling away here in the final 14 minutes of the race. And if he is, that would be music to his ears.
Yeah, if he can keep that going, that would be absolutely great for him. Pulling away from Hugo Mels will only solidate his championship position. As we're now looking at Facekas going towards the back of Chamberlain, both in the Honda, so same car, though we've seen Chamberlain struggle quite a bit also with just going off track by himself and breaking on the grass.
Very scary move seeing a driver do that, but again, if your steering is mostly straight, that's not a really big risk. The curb's not that big. not putting a whole lot of wheel into it. There's nothing to really spin your wheels up on. Not like driving off the track per se on a corner like this, for instance. There's everything is pointed in the same direction. Barnabas Faithkes, by the way, looking to take seventh place from Harley Chamberlain, who just a couple of laps ago was looking a shoe in for a top five, or at least an opportunity at a top five spot. He might be in eighth place before this race is over. Dare I say, could it be worse? Jan Climbs is not too far behind Faithkes right now to make that an interesting fight for what would be eighth place. Potentially more loss for Chamberlain. I was reacting to something whenever you were talking, Kevin, and it was that Samir Foch has retied the fastest lap of the race. The Speed Juice Fastest Lap of the Race Award getting an absolute workout today. And again, I'm pretty sure whoever ran the lap first, the one that gets the championship points for quickest lap. I'm pretty sure Tom Bryant told me that at some point. And this time, unlike the last time, where Samir Foch ran it and then Jardier ran it, it's the reverse this time. Jardier ran it first, Samir Foch ran it second. That would mean that Jardier would get the points. What a ridiculous race.
I got whispered into my little ear before that it's probably going to be both of them, as even though we might be able to watch it back in replay who got it first, within the website it's not that possible, it seems, or the way it works on the back end.
So you're telling me Tom Bryant lied to me?
Maybe, but at the moment it looks like they're both going to get the Speed Juice Fastest Lap.
Can I just say, if that is the case, I 100% agree with that. If you run an identical time, why wouldn't you give it to both of them?
Well, it's also just like it's never happened before. So, if this is the way it stays, it's going to be very interesting to see what we're actually going to do.
Yeah, somebody's getting points. I would prefer it if both of them got it, simply because of how ridiculous that would be, that you have two drivers fighting for the championship who are both wanting and needing points, and they tie for bonus points as well, so they have to share it. Very interesting. It is possible at some point in our history, was the way that I'm thinking, but again, I don't think it's ever actually happened, so we've never had to cross that bridge, and we still won't have to cross that bridge here today, or at least for the time being, because Hugo Merrils has, you guessed it, taken the fastest lap of the race for himself. That's more important than it may seem, because again, a car that looked like it was fading a little bit off the back of Jardier is now right back up behind him.
Yeah, and then we saw it as well in the first stint. Jardier, once he got that position, was driving away. Hugo near the end closed back in. Seeing the exact same thing happening here with 10 minutes to go. It does seem like Hugo Merrils has a bit more in that car at the end of a stint.
Yeah, I just wonder if that's something to do with the fuel strategy on that car, maybe something to do with the tires. I'm unsure, but clearly we've seen this from time to time. We've seen this from Jardier, we've seen this from Hugo before as well. It's like they flip a switch at various points in the run, and it completely changes how the car is running. And I suspect that has something to do with fuel management, tire management, or the like, because it is literally like a light switch. It's on and off, and they've been dueling it out in more ways than one today. A couple of head-to-head battles, and who's to say? I don't think it's over yet.
No, they had the head-to-head battle, then the little mistake by Hugo Merrils. Then the pit strategy battle as well, and once again they're so close together for these last 9 minutes. I think there's going to be nothing to split between them.
Jardier can take control of the championship today with a win, and Foch finishing third. If Hugo wins it, Jardier finishes second and Foch finishes third, there'll be just about nothing in it in the championship between the two of them, Jardier and Foch. If Foch is somehow able to get in front of Merrils, then obviously it is basically the same scenario. Jardier, of course, just responded to Hugo's quickest time and has retaken sole possession of the fastest lap of the race. Those are precious Precious bonus points.
You want to have a little bet, Jesse?
Do go on.
How much that Samir Foch will now take the exact same lap time as Jardier?
I have no idea.
Ivan?
Absolutely not. Oh
Okay.
my goodness! Sideways race car.
And that was, I think, Johnny Racer. Yeah, Johnny Racer had a little bit of a slip with Vitor Marcos now taking the position, going through Clark Curve onto the final straight. And it's a shame because I think Johnny Racer, after he was passed by Sean Lele, but even with that damage, I thought he was still doing a pretty good race.
Sure was, and again, credit to him holding off.
Oh, there goes Chamberlain.
Face kiss. Oh, and just as I said that about Hartley Chamberlain, the Autumn Racing car, was just saying they were doing such a nice job holding on to 7th and maybe reeling in Dixon Chin for 6th place, and the car's gone around. No damage this time, but the damage done, and that is on the scoring pylon to P9. At any rate, that allowed Face Kiss and climbs through, I'm pretty sure.
I think it was only Face Kiss, though. Might be wrong. Otherwise, looks like Jan climbs but a couple seconds behind, so he must have lost time somewhere, as now, once again, 5 seconds between the two.
Well, never can take your eye off of it just because you're getting closer to the finish line. It doesn't make the race any more arduous or any more treacherous, and certainly some of the cars finding that out the hard way. Dealing with lap traffic here at the end of the race could play a huge factor in it. Jardier absolutely shot out of a cannon, though. He gapped Barrels by nearly half a second on the previous lap and has got him by about a quarter, probably going to be more at the line, I would argue, this time through as well. Samir Foch, not a threat in 3rd place, is content to take the championship fight into the final round here. And, well, what can you say? Foch has not been the most flashy driver this season, but he hasn't had to be. He's been consistent, the most consistent.
Yeah, picking up good results every single race. And collision between Christian Bock and the 181 of Herman Frey. See what happens here. Oh, Herman Frey went off before as they go through Cooper Straight.
Oh no!
Oh, Christian Bock just tried to slingshot behind him, did a bit too much, got into the grass, and then hit. Gonna be Christian.
How many times do we have to see it, Kevin? A car going off of the racetrack, careening out of control on the wet grass. Seems like a broken record today.
Happens every time. As we now look at a race replay, now see it from inside Christian Bock's car. Yeah, he just did a bit too much.
It wasn't for lack of trying. The steering wheel was, I would call that 45 degrees left. He was turning left, but it doesn't matter what you're doing when you're on the grass. The car's not going to turn. There was an accident there. He didn't know which way to take. Chose the wrong direction, it seems.
Yeah, and it's just a shame that he did a bit too much trying to slingshot behind, because that initial left turn, which put him onto the grass, I think the rear just slipped away from him a little bit there, which caused him to go wide. But if he was able to pull that off, that's some move.
Well, Hugo Merrils has regained a little bit of composure. It was 1.6 seconds. The gap is down to 1.4 seconds now. Might we still get a fight here to the finish? We'll have to wait and see. Hugo's going to have to get a move on as Jardier has very, very patiently paced out in front here. Not put a single tire wrong in this race. It's a typical Jardier drive, if we're completely honest with ourselves. Just about making good time, lap after lap, not making mistakes, not beating yourself. Might be a path to a championship.
Yeah, and the only thing that's a shame is that Hugo Merrils got slowed down by the back markers. I think it was Vitor Marcos that slowed him down a little bit through the section where we now see Herman Frey and Christian Bock go through, which gave that gap to Jardier to Hugo Merrils. Because otherwise I think it would have been a very good fight until the end, but Yeah, it doesn't seem like Hugo Morales is able to close it at this point.
3 minutes and some change left in the race. Everybody's already completed their pit stop, so no worries there. Nobody has to come down. Everybody pretty much made their pit stop around the halfway point of the race, just some a little bit earlier than others. Then nose to tail for Jardier and Merrills, but Jardier starting to lose Hugo a little bit. Samir Foch able to close in. Whitburn comfortable in fourth place. And I say that, but I'm not too sure I'm right, because here comes Valentin Berrier. It was 5 seconds, then it was 4 seconds a few laps ago. Now it's down to 2 seconds, but might it just be a gap slightly too far for Valentin Berrier to get back up there? Keep in mind, Berrier finishes 5th today. He's not out of this championship. It's going to take some doing. Samir Foch and Jardier are going to have a stinker of a race next week for it to be possible, but it is still, after all, very possible.
It is very possible, especially with how close this championship is. Even though he loses out a bit of the points today, it's still going to be very close. It is actually sort of a shame that it wasn't like a Barrier first, Jardier second, and Bosch third, just to make it even closer for the final race. But that might have been asking for a bit too much.
Yeah, Kevin, we try not to get a little bit too greedy here. You know, sometimes it would have been brilliant that way, but I got to tell you, if you or anybody at home thinks they know how it's going to go next week, I urge you to watch anyway, because we have seen some absolutely ridiculous championship deciders. We've seen them decided by countback on several occasions, and on one particular occasion in a Pro-Am championship, I believe the Am championship was decided the final race of the season, the final lap of the season. All the driver or the championship leader had to do was come into the race and finish, I think it was 85% of the race is what they needed to do to guarantee the championship, and they didn't complete 85% of the race, and the guy who was trailing in the championship won and had the fastest lap and won the championship by a single point after needing an unholy comeback, and they did it. So you never can count anybody out, not even Valentin Berrier. Been so resilient this season. Can't imagine he's going to come with anything less than his best. And that is Fry off of the racetrack. Got to watch the rejoin here. Scary stuff from everybody involved. Giving way is the 181. The leaders do come through here, crossing up in front of Hugo Merrill. Scary moment still. It's cleared.
Yeah, luckily that all went safe. It looked a bit sketchy, especially on the switching of the side of the track. But they all went through safely. Leader still going. But their final lap of this race, as we're now looking at the pace, still trying to get past Dixon Chen, going through Dingle Dell onto Sheens. They've been fighting for quite a couple minutes, Rob.
Just sort of filling each other out, Dixon Chen and Fazekis. Fazekis is not willing to make a mistake here. He's seen what happened to some of the other cars today, and is not willing to make that same mistake. Christian Bach here getting passed by the leaders. The 300 is off. They've got that car restarted now, but Bach here trying not to be a factor here in the fight for the win. Clear and through. Hugo will now filter through at some point. Yeah, these two have put on a show so far here, fighting over what is effectively 6th place.
Yeah, and they've kept it very close and tidy for the last couple of laps, as they have now just gone through it. It's only a few more overtaking opportunities as Christian Bach goes off. I don't know whether he was forced off. It was a bit too late with the camera switch. Apparently there was contact as
Herman was off again. He's back on again.
Oh man, what an end to this fight here. And back end of the mid pack. I wonder what's going to happen there.
Well, this is it. This is the checkered flag they're coming up to. The 181 tries to cover to the inside, and he has done. They're going to be side by side at the line. By the way, Jardier has won the race. It's going to be almost a dead heat. Who's going to get it? And too close to call photo finish. And it's going to be Lele wins that fight over Fry by just about 3 one thousandths of a second. That's how close it was. Jardier wins the race by a second over Hugo Merles. Samir Foch comes home in third place. It is a Ferrari podium lockout.
Oh,
And what a race it has been for the prancing horse. Whitburn comes across backwards almost in fourth place. Valentin Berrier takes a championship hope into the final round in fifth. Dixon Shin, Fazekiss climbs Chamberlain, Nagazi. And we're just going to relive some of this. This was the contact with the GTR that led them to getting side by side in the first place. So I'm quite curious now. The stewards might have something to say about that, pending post-race penalties. But the back half of the field here, Fazekiss climbs Chamberlain, Magazi. Oh, was there contact here?
oh. Yeah, it looks like just a tap by Vitor onto the back of Johnny Razor, but nothing too much happening.
Definitely could have been worse there. Fazekiss climbs Chamberlain Van Kampen, top 10. Gazi, Lele, Fry, Bach, Razor, Marcos, Ehrentraut, Garrett, and Horsey are your drivers today. Horsey did not finish this race today. Everybody else did make it to the checkered flag. Kevin, surprised about the Ferrari lockout of the podium? Sure not.
Not if you had a look at what happened in practice, what happened in qualifying. Like you had the threat of Whitburn in the point there, but looking at what happened, they were the most consistent. They had the most pace. Not surprised at all.
Yeah, I gotta say, it was a very tight battle. It could have been any of them. And I will say, uh, despite my prediction early on in the broadcast today, nobody lost their opportunity to win this championship. For Valentin Berrier, it is going to be a longer road than it will be for Foch or Jardier, but it is still possible. Not only is it mathematically possible, all he really needs is for both of those drivers to lay a little bit of an egg. Doesn't even have to be that big of an egg next week. And I was explaining earlier, we've seen crazier things happen. Drivers needing just 1 point to clinch a championship, couldn't get it, gave up the entire thing. RCI's longest championship concludes in 1 week. We'll be right back here with you for live coverage of the season finale of the GT Sprint Challenge. We'd love to have you with us for that particular race. Like, subscribe, do all the things. Don't miss a single race for that. Janetta Cup continues this Monday as well. If you're looking to sign up for any of the action coming up, we've got a couple of things happening for you. The 26th of November, the 12-hour Bathurst Grab a Friend and enjoy the last large endurance race of the year here at RCI. Of course, it doesn't matter what your skill level is, we have a split for you. We're into more weekly racing if that's more your thing. We have GT4 and BMW Touring Car Championship multi-class coming at you for Thursday's upcoming. Sign up still open, still time to get your pre-quali done and get in for race 1. And the winter mini season for Night Owl, the winter break as it's called. We'll gloss over the fact that it's in autumn. Not talking about that. Besides that, signups for the 3-race mini Saturday night championship are open as well. For a reminder, you can sign up to any championship already in progress and join week of when you do your pre-queue the week before the race. Still time to do all of those as well. Kevin Boss, final thoughts on today's action.
It was overall quite clean race. I think we had some good fights. We had some slips. We had some slides. We had some crashes. It had a bit of everything. Some tight battles, especially between Jardier and Hugo Merles. Shame that Whitburn wasn't able to catch up to the Ferraris, but he still had a good fight with Valentin Berrier. And even a bit further down between Dixon Chen and Fazekiss at the end. I really enjoyed that.
It was a fantastic race to watch. Everybody was going off left, right, and center, but honestly, it added to the chaos, but still a lot of good racing was had as well. Of course, a big thank you to our partners that make this race and every race possible, AK Informatica. Thank you for providing our server solutions, drivers61.com. You can get 25% off your driver coaching by going to driver61.com and using our discount code. Link is in the description of this video. And driver coaching, of course, can and will make you a better racing driver. Worked for a lot of the admin team here at RCI. They've got the trophies to prove it and to back that up. Lovely staff over there. Drivers, very friendly, no matter where you are on the scale of pleb to alien, they can still help you get better at your craft. And of course, Fanatec.com. When you make purchases of quality sim racing hardware at Fanatec.com, feel free to use our affiliate link in the description of the video. It doesn't cost you a thing, and it tells them that we sent you. It helps us with things like server costs when you use the link and make a purchase. Several of you have done, and we thank you very much for that. What a crazy race in the rain here at Brands Hatch. A very fantastic race by Jardier. Just refused to make a single mistake today and got another win. Put himself in the driver's seat of the championship, and as he deserves, will go into that final round with all of the weight not necessarily on his shoulders. He will be atop the standings for the final race. We'll see you in 1 week, and on behalf of everybody here at RCI, the admin, broadcast team, and the stewards, we thank you for watching. But until next week, have a good night.